Did you guys want me to put the music back on? I can just keep playing that if that's better. Welcome, everyone. Let's get back to our Zoom here. Let everybody admit all. There's Connie and Hubert. I'm sure Isaiah will be here soon. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Friday. It's been a crazy week. Oh, there's admit. Turn it off. Oh, good, Tom. Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Hey, hello.
Hey, Tom.
Oh,
Glad you. I was worried. I meant to an hour ago message you just to say, remember we're bumped it up
1 hour ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I actually forgot until I was cleaning out my email like 2 days ago, and I saw that, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Welcome, welcome.
Good to clean out your email from time to time. Make sure there's not something sitting there you got to remember.
Yeah, I think like most people, I use my inbox as my to-do list.
Yeah.
And, but usually I try to keep it mostly empty, but there's the stuff that bubbles to the top that I'm like, okay, that's the stuff I got to work on, now. But anyway, yeah, it's always loads of fun. All right, let's jump in. Anyone got anything they're working on? Anything in particular you need help with?
I've been too busy with picking all my garden produce and canning. I haven't had time to do anything.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I see Jean's here. Hey, Jean, how you doing?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, good and you?
Good.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for that tutorial. People didn't watch it. That Inno setup was really awesome. Very interesting. A great way if you want to create an installer.
Right. Well,
Thank
we
you.
are actually, I think we should link that to one of our hero members because he's actually right now thinking about creating an Inno setup, but it was not working as he was thinking. So maybe we would just link to that video because it might help him on that.
Mhm.
Again, a few people are actually trying to to get better at that. So yeah.
Unless anyone has something particular to work on, Isaiah, without even showing the code, just talk through what you and Tom were doing with the distributing of the AutoHotkey executable with the script to avoid the virus, often getting flagged as a virus.
Yeah, for that, I don't need to show any code. I could definitely just share that particular folder because it's just a shortcut. So basically, I'm not sure if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we're good.
Yep.
You know that whenever you compile a script, usually when you give it to somebody else, the script is going to be flagged usually by antiviruses as something that is not signed, that it could be a virus or whatever. But AutoHotkey.exe, so that means the main AutoHotkey executable, that one is signed. So that one, you don't have that little bit of an issue. So what we did is that we have the application, we send it with AutoHotkey by itself like this. So I have the AutoHotkey executable. And now we just created a shortcut that the properties of the shortcut are that we're going to use the CMD executable, quiet, and I pass it a command. The command is the start. And this is the interesting part that I could pass, how do I say, not the full path to the script, but basically this, I forgot the name of that. Well, they're relative paths. So it is relative. And that was the main point of this, that I needed a relative path to where AutoHotkey is and where the script is. So the CMD is looking for those two things right next to each other, right? And that means that I could share this whole folder. I could share this folder to many people, and they all can double click on it and run the program, right? And that way, even if they do not have AutoHotkey installed, the program is going to work because I am pointing to this AutoHotkey executable there, which is signed. Now, what happens with this is that we have a beta version of our program. We want to send it to people. Probably those people do not have AutoHotkey installed. And also, we do not want the antivirus to flag our compiled script. So it was trying to work around that. It has its drawbacks because right now you cannot just move this shortcut anywhere else, because now the shortcut is not going to find the folder because it's a relative path and it's relative to where it is. So the shortcut must be right next to whatever is pointing at. And yeah, we tried to avoid this antivirus flagging and stuff because the AutoHotkey was already signed. That's the main idea behind it. I don't know if that would help some people, but basically it's just creating a shortcut to the CMD that actually executes the script with the AutoHotkey that I provided in the folder. That's all it does.
Just to, if you want you, if you can copy all that
Yeah.
text right there.
So this is what I'm.
Sometimes you can't paste stuff in the chat, but
yeah, let's double check on that. I can, and I would just change this to
YouTube chat that
script.ahk. There you go. So this is, I just pasted it into the chat. Is the command that I'm using on that shortcut. You might modify it however you want. And this is kind of like a quick workaround to not have to compile your script and not having the user having to compile to install AutoHotkey either. It's kind of like a compromise between the two. It's a little bit hacky, but yeah, it works.
And clearly, if you have something you don't want them to peek inside, this is not.
No, this is not the way to go. So if your script is supposed to be compiled for them not to modify stuff, like for example, if it has a licensing kind of way going, this is great for just beta testing as we are. And interestingly enough, then I could grab this folder, right? If I have it in Dropbox, for example, I could right click, copy the Dropbox link for that folder and give that to other people. They don't have to download anything. And they could just go ahead and use that. Or I could share that folder to them as well. So
Jean said his AutoHotkey executable isn't signed, his new version.
it isn't. Well, what would happen with that? So hold on. Are you talking about AutoHotkey version 2 or AutoHotkey version 1?
1.1.1.33.
It's not signed?
It's not signed.
So hold on. So would that mean that the installer is signed, but the
Which
executable
installer?
is not? So whenever you download, so when you go to AutoHotkey,
which I would agree with, because I know when we talked to Tank about this overall signing of certifications, he wasn't, doing it. And he's like, oh, maybe we should do that with the AutoHotkey executable.
Yeah.
right? But I think one of them is signed because I know that when you download the current version, oh no, hold on.
I don't think that it's signed as AS.
No, it's not.
Been tried and tested, and that
Right.
the antivirus people say, oh, you know what? That executable, we know that one. It's okay.
Yeah. It's
All
better
right.
known that your new script. So yes,
Also,
the
it's
algorithm
not
will
signed.
consider it
Okay.
safe because it's already been used by many people without being reported.
All right.
So that's better. Your solution is still better than distributing your code.
Okay, but it's not. They are not signed. I thought that they were.
They are just better known.
Oh,
So
right.
they may
okay.
still be flagged as
As a virus. Okay.
As a virus, even if it is signed, it can be flagged as a virus. It still happens.
So
much less, but
Mhm.
So Anuman, because I'm not going to try to say the name he has here, says he's seen a couple examples on the forum of different ways to sign it that are quote unquote free, and something like using WSL or using PowerShell. But I think you can sign your own things for you, right?
Yep.
yeah,
But
it won't help.
that's where I think that's
It won't help in for other users. They will still be, because there's nothing that confirm from where
it came from.
No certificate,
Right.
no,
And actually,
no, authorized or confirmed certificate. Yeah.
It's true.
Chris,
And
correct me if I'm wrong.
yesterday I was telling that to you, Joe. So it was like, it's a self-signing certificate.
That's what I was going to say. Right.
Exactly.
It looks at your computer and
Right.
you sign it, and then on your computer, you're
It's
great.
good,
Right.
but in other computers, it will not work. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There may be some advantages doing that, but you are yourself. So what's
No,
the main goal
that's-
of signing is to certify who distributed it. And
I
your
think
own certificate is not recognized by outside your computer as being legit.
now here's the thing. Here's the question. And somebody who has worked with this before might be able to help us. And it is this. You create a self-signing certificate. Now, this certificate, you could install it in other computers. But the problem is whenever you try to install a certificate in a computer, it gives you some warnings. And I think this happens, for example, with Fiddler. When you open Fiddler, you have an option for watching encrypted data, that it gives you the option to install their certificate on your computer. And actually, and it is good for me to just show this real quick. It is an option that even whenever you do that, it tells you, if I remember correctly here, it says like decrypt certificate generated by something. So they created their own certificate, but whenever you do it, whenever you add that option, it actually tells you like install, let me see, trust the root certificate or something. It gives you something that says, do not trust certificates of anybody. Like, yeah, do you want to trust it? Yes, it says, hey, do not trust this certificate. And so they created their own certificate and they're going to add it to your computer for it to work correctly. But you do have a few kind of like warnings and going. They have to actually allow you. They have to allow you to install that certificate in their
Someone
machine.
could still fake to be them and send the certificate pretending they are them and they are not them. They are installing a virus on your system.
Yeah, exactly.
Having a recognized certificate is as someone, and I'm just went through that again. I've done that 3 years ago. The first time I had to add papers signed by a notary because I'm not a company, I'm an individual. So it's more complicated to get a certificate when you're an individual. And after 3 years, I just had to renew it. And just for the I paid for the new renewal. Everything has been processed. I had to provide again my license ID with a selfie showing I am the same guy, that the selfie, then the driver ID. All this is done. I receive an email saying me that the certificate has been issued, and click here to download, and the download link doesn't work. And I posted a support. I created a ticket on their system on Monday and still have no news. And my certificate is expired. My previous one is expiring in a few days. So the company is Sectigo, and at this point, I could not say they have a very good client support.
Right.
I have something to bring up too. That's kind of another option. So I know a lot of people are using AHK for their job, obviously. So they're going to be sharing amongst other computers. So like my last company, we were sharing the scripts I wrote across, I don't know, maybe 100 computers. And we would run into those problems where I think the program was called Traps. And it was constantly like quarantining a lot of the scripts that I wrote. So what we did is like, I always tell people, because they never think to go beyond that. They're like, oh, it didn't work. I guess we're screwed. Don't forget you have an IT department. So what we would do is we would submit a ticket and just say like, hey, here's my code. It's written in AHK. You know, at first they had no clue what that was, but then they kind of got used to me knowing that it was safe. I was making safe programs. But they were able to go in. I would give them the script name. I'd be like, okay, here's the final name for it. And they could go into the virus program and say, allow this script
whitelist
to run from, they could that's right, whitelist. And then it would work on every computer as long as I didn't change the name. And if I did, like maybe I had a version number on it, like V1, V2, I would just have to update them to let them know that like, hey, going live, we needed to also whitelist this name. So that's
Right.
always another option that I throw out there, because a lot of people don't think IT can mess around with the antivirus and allow stuff. Now, obviously, it depends on your company. Some companies
Yeah.
are going to be more strict than others.
Yeah,
Mine was pretty
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
They would do the research. Okay, AHK, here's what his code's doing. All right, we'll allow it. So
And
I
if
just
you-
always like to
if
throw
you
that out.
distribute your
'cause some people just
software,
give up.
yeah. And if you distribute your software, you could tell your user to put your software on their whitelist with their
before running it.
antivirus. Yeah. The only thing is that you don't know which antivirus they have, so you cannot give them precise
Well-
instructions on doing that. So it depends on the user being able to configure its
Well, most
firewall or
companies
antivirus.
are going to have a standard antivirus that's already installed.
Yeah, but I
where you're
mean
not
for
gonna have
individual
control.
users. Yeah, but I
Right.
mean for individual users that could also
Oh,
do
yeah,
that
yeah.
on their
I'm
own
speaking
computer,
from experience.
just to prevent the malware alert that they could receive.
That
What,
is
Joe?
right.
I said you're speaking from experience of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that is usually the case when you go ahead and release code into the wild. You're going to have so many variations of computer situation environments that you're going to have a lot of issues. Now, the cool thing about companies is that the environment in that company is mostly standardized,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
If you
when
have an IT
talk
department
about-
that is
yeah,
open to that, because you
Except
could
once.
have IT department are not open to that.
exactly.
Then you got the people who want to know why it won't run on
Well-
my Mac OS computer. I get that a lot, actually.
If you work in the banking environment, it can be much harder to get this kind of thing being approved.
No, of course. No, of course. That and there are good reasons for that. Actually, it's the same. Joe and I had a talk with Tank, the forum moderator, and we were talking about trying to figure out if somebody selected text. So whenever we have functions that we have a hacky way of doing that, and we were asking him, do you know any other ways? And then he actually hit us with the reality. Hey, for security reasons, there is no way to do that easily. You have to hack your way around it. And because you can detect if the mouse was dragged, but there are many reasons why you drag your mouse: for moving a window, for resizing a window, for selecting stuff in the desktop. And we actually only want to check whether text was selected. So, and then he says, no, for security reasons, you shouldn't be able to do that. Well, that's what happens in banking departments and banking situations. For security reasons, especially money from other people, you're going to have so many weird restrictions that you might not even think, like, why are they restricting this one?
Yeah.
Somebody tried something weird that using that specific thing. And I was like, oh, man, that's
Same
so
thing
annoying.
same thing in the health companies or hospital, or where their private information being
We did
available,
legal
yeah.
work. We did legal work, and most of the functionality of our program was copy paste. So it'd like copy from one program, format it, paste it into another program. But there was this one website where we were not allowed to copy and paste, like not even manually. We had to hand type what we saw on the screen because it was just such a secure website that they didn't want anything in your clipboard.
So
That was like so crazy.
we did get a question. Tyler asked. He said he's got a. This is actually interesting because I have a script at work that a few of us use, and every once in a while the modifier keys will stick. I assume that means, which actually in Isaiah, I think I've told you this. My every once in a while my apps key gets triggered and gets stuck down. And of course, because I use the apps key to launch a lot of programs, I'll start typing and I get like 8 programs launched.
Opened.
Yeah, and you and I looked at it a long time ago, and we could never figure out why it happened.
Why is that?
Yeah,
But I don't know.
it's a pretty well-known problem.
Yeah. Well, I would just suggest sending the up key with all, for example, with modifier keys. So what you do is
I also use just throw it out there real quick if you want to show it, is it's like the mod key timeout is really good to use, because then you don't have to use up all the time. You can just use that once.
yeah. So then you could do something like this. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So if you have a modifier key as a hotkey, always send the up command before doing your things. That way you are sure that it got released, even if the person didn't release it. That's one way of working around it. Again, this is just a workaround, but it is something that you can try to do before your action. And that way, as soon as you press the key, the system is going to send the up key if you released it, but you make sure that it's being released by just sending it yourself. And then after that, you just go ahead and do anything else. And that should, I think that should, in theory, help you with that particular issue of sticking, that the modifier's key is getting sticked.
Tom, why don't you show what you were talking about?
Right.
Yeah. I like doing it the way he just showed, just because it's easy. But if you have tons of times where you're doing sends with, a modifier, it can kind of get annoying to have that much.
To do that.
There we go. Yeah, so basically, like, all it is really is that. So I think by default, it's like 50 milliseconds. But even though it's like pre-programmed into AHK, it sometimes just doesn't seem to like know that that's a setting. So sometimes I'll just retell the script to run it, where you just put this at like, the first like few lines of your script with the pre-run stuff before you hit your first hotkey or whatever.
That is interesting.
I've never seen that.
I have never seen that. I actually.
Yeah, so this is a good way to do it versus like I said, I'll do it the way he just showed. But if I'm doing, if I have a program that has 1,000 lines of code and I'm doing, modifier sends 50, 100 times, I'll just do this instead. So by default, this actually auto runs when you run AutoHotkeys. And it's I think it's 50 milliseconds.
Oh, okay. You're
For
saying
some reason that setting never like locks in. So I'm basically telling it again. Like,
all right.
Make sure this setting's there like it's supposed to be. And this seems to work most of the time, at least for me.
Okay. I've never seen that.
We had that issue a lot.
Why don't you pull up the help on it?
Yeah, I have it. I have it open.
Wide open. So Tom's sharing a screen. It just
okay.
Let me copy paste that.
Yeah, doesn't Notepad allow you just to hit F1?
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about
that. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've used it, but anyway. I know. Milliseconds.
I can't
understand
see you guys out of the way.
Now.
Let me move you guys out of the way. Should say the default somewhere.
Yeah, at the bottom. In remarks, the previous. So yeah, no. So hold on. In the last two sentences of remarks, yeah, that's the one. So if this directive is not specified in a script, it behaves as though set to 50. Now, one of the things that I was reading is like this directive does not need to be used when you're sending when hotkeys send their keystrokes via the send input or send play methods. The interesting thing is that in version 1, the send command behaves as send event. That's the reason why sometimes you need to do that. So,
yeah.
But if you have a directive or a command that says send, how the send behaves to input. I don't know if you remember this directive or command that says like send input.
Yeah.
So hold on. Send mode, I think. Yes, if you use the send mode command, if you use the send mode to change it to input, so that send always sends send input, then you do not need to worry about these things. But if you do not use that particular command, then yeah, this actually makes a difference. But I have never heard about that. So what it does is that it tells it to release it every 50 milliseconds, right?
Which is really fast. I mean, to me, I don't know.
No, well, I think what it's telling is that when you let go of it on the keyboard at the 50 milliseconds, then it goes ahead and triggers it again just in case.
Yeah, if it's not detecting like yeah, being currently pressed, even though it is being pressed, like I don't know, it's this weird thing with AHK where it just like
Mm,
it like doesn't recognize. Yeah,
that it
I always
was
add this
released.
if I'm doing a bunch of like mod things, I'll add this at the beginning
Hotkeys
of the
and stuff.
script.
Right.
I think I've done 50 and I've also done like 250 milliseconds. But that's all I've ever used, and they've both worked amazingly.
Okay, but that's a very good thing. I have never actually even heard about that one.
This is one of those we need to create a simple tool to every day. You know, like how programs when you launch them they pop up with the tooltip. Like we
Yeah.
should one day
Hey,
create a new-
you know that you could use this.
Yep.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And I have a video that I released where I talk a little bit more in depth about using that. It's called, I think, it's like most common AHK issues. And it's like
Oh.
some of the biggest bugs you can come across.
Mhm.
I think I talk about memory leaks in the AHK when it comes to comms,
Mhm.
stuff like that.
That is really, yeah, that is a little bit more advanced, but yeah, I get your point.
Oh yeah, no,
Now,
that one's a
now-
little easier. Memory leaks, yeah, that gets a little more. Because
Yeah.
there's a bad memory leak when it comes to comms and Internet Explorer.
No, of course, because that's the problem. They do not get released automatically. You have to work on them. And it is interesting when you code in other languages, like for example, C or C++, you have to have this memory thing going on. Like every time you create a variable or an object, you have to make sure that at the end it's being released. But then you have this other languages like C# that does memory management for you. So after a while, if an object is not being used, it releases it. AutoHotkey does something very similar in the sense that AutoHotkey, you don't have to worry about whether a variable is released or not. It would do it by itself. But when it goes to COM objects, now it is outside of AutoHotkey. So that's why then if you do not manually release it, probably the COM object that you're calling is not releasing it automatically, and then it just stays. It just hugs your memory, which
The
the
way-
Internet Explorer option, the Internet Explorer object is
Yeah.
similar to that. Yeah.
The way I've always
Now, if only we could fix the memory leaking problem in us humans, we'd be all better.
I forgot more than I've learned in AutoHotkeys.
Yeah.
I always tell people like a simple way because comms can be kind of complicated, and it's like, you know, like just even understanding like what they do. And I've always kind of explained it to like AHK is a person, Internet Explorer is a house. Someone comes up, knocks on the door, you know, Internet Explorer answers, "What do you want?" I want this book up in the bedroom. So you give it instructions of what you want. It goes, gets it, gives you the book, but then forgets to close the front door.
Yeah, exactly. That's
So
exactly how
then-
it is.
You issue another comm. They come to the front door. It's open. Well, they can't knock. So now they go to the back door, knock. Now you have two comms, you know, pretty much going on and stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually you run out of doors and windows to knock on if they're getting left open.
That's a
Yeah.
good analogy. Well done.
It is. Well, it would be almost as good. The only thing is that just imagine when you create a COM object, you just build a totally new house
Oh,
and
yeah.
you forgot to close the door. Now, when you go ahead and create another COM object, if the door is open, what you do is you create a whole new house and then leave that one door open. And then you have 5 houses built. You know, you're wasting resources on it. While if you had just created a new house, closed the door and destroyed the house, when you come back, you just create a new house, but you don't have the other one there, you know?
Yeah,
So it was close, the analogy, but just think about it. Every time you create a COM object, you're building a new house. You have to create resources onto that thing. But yeah, you know, are
No,
there
that's
any other
a good way to say it.
questions? Yeah, go ahead. Any other questions going around?
I've got some questions about the format of these meetings, just to clarify, because we're now an hour earlier. Is this is the free office hours thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we have 2 more
About 2
meetings for the
hours.
heroes.
Well, this is it's streamed to YouTube, right?
Yeah, this one is streamed. Yeah.
Okay. And then we have 2 more meetings after this for the heroes.
Well, heroes have 2 more meetings, right?
Yeah, the heroes
Yes.
have 2 more meetings. Yeah.
Does it matter is it the same link for the heroes for the 2 meetings?
Right.
It's the same.
And does
Yeah.
it matter which one you attend, or can you attend both? Or
Did you read the emails I've been sending?
I did get them. I haven't read them all.
Yeah, because we actually said that. Yeah.
Okay.
You can attend any of them, but just check on the email and you will see
Okay.
how it's going to be working. But in general, yeah, there are 2 more hours after this one. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, mainly, you can ask questions wherever you want, but if you want support on something, you need to focus only in one meeting where you get to ask that, because that's why we created more than one group, because people need
You don't want to
time.
hog the 3 hours all to yourself.
exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
If there are no more questions, I wanted to kind of like bring a concept for whoever is actually, creating scripts and they want to log actions. So one of the things that you were saying, Guy, in one of your questions is, hey, should I log stuff? And, how do I do that? In general, I will just answer with a very generic thing that you can then use however you want. I find very useful to have a function called log that I'm going to be using throughout my script.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is that it uses the output command. So for example, let me share real quick. It is just a normal log function.
Mm-hmm.
I pass a text and the line number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forget about this question mark here that is for version 2, but you could have something like this, right?
Okay.
Now, what I do is, it is very simple because I'm just outputting that into the output debug command, however it is. But sometimes I don't want to do that. What I want to do is to actually file append.
Yes.
So not only I want to send the output debug, I also want to append to a file, whatever that file is, log, actions.log.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing about using that particular function throughout my code is that if I need to modify how the function behaves, I just modify it once and all my code is now updated. You see what I mean? So if I just want to output debug, then I just start with that. I start working on my program like that. And if at some point I say, hey, now I want to have that in a file, I just come to this function and now add the file append and say whatever, line, and then, whatever it is. And now it's logging it to a file. So
that's really useful. I have a debug flag somewhere that if the program is running in debug flag, it keeps on chucking all these message boxes at me. But now if a user is using this program, that's no good to him. It's good for me as a developer. But so sometimes you need to contact a user and saying, let me have that file. I want to see what's going on your machine, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have to go back and retrofit this function.
Yeah, but for now, you're screwed because you have to create that now. So,
correct.
Yeah, but in general, that's the reason why I'm saying this. It is a good idea to, whenever you're creating a script, have this function ready.
Yeah.
So that your users have it. And also, I don't know if you know that there's this on error function. Have you used this on error?
No, that I have not.
Right. On error sets you can use this, and let me just open the help file. This is the same. Let me just open the version 1 kind of thing, because I usually code in version 2, but it's the same. It actually works definitely the same. And you have this on error, and it just sets a function to launch whenever there's an error on your script. Okay. So you just tell it what you're going to do. And look at that. On error, you have a function called log error, and you file append to a file if you want. So it does that automatically for you. You don't even have to.
That's really useful. I think that's really useful.
And this is the thing. Why do I need this on error? Because if I do not have it throughout my code, so let me see, I think I have it here. throughout my code, I have to use my function, like log this,
Yes.
log that, log this.
Mhm.
If you don't want to do that manually on each line, you can just call it once, as I just shown, like I just have the, what was it, the debug here. So
Yes.
I just call it one on error, and it
Mhm.
automatically calls that function for you when an error occurs. So that way you can have a log of the errors automatically instead of you manually logging each
That's
time.
really useful.
Can you
So-
generate an error if you want to log something yourself, even if it's not a
No,
real
no,
error?
you can, you use, no, you use the log
Use
function
log?
by itself,
Okay.
right? You just use the log function whenever you want. And the on error one would log if there was, for example, if you're, so I would say on error log, for example, return, and then check this out, throw.
Does a log have to be inverted commas or not?
Sorry,
Does a log need to be in inverted commas?
what does that mean?
In the brackets on error, I saw that it was in inverted commas in the help file.
Let me double check what you mean. So,
If you go to the example at the bottom, it says on error, and log error is in
all right,
inverted.
yeah, this is in version 1. Yes, in version 1, it is not taking a function as a function, it's actually taking it as a string.
Okay.
So yeah, good catch on that. But for example, if I throw something, let me try this. Now I have my log function exception.
We have a whole webinar on it, by the way. I posted the links in the chat.
Right. And basically you can use this to, you can either throw an error, and this is answering to John. You can either throw an error and it would trigger the function, or you can use your function normally because you can say what it is, right? So test, you can use it whatever you want. So if you want to use it explicitly, just go ahead and use your function normally. But if you have the on error, it would also launch, even if you didn't use it. It would actually log. If there was an AutoHotkey error that you didn't catch or you didn't know that it was going to happen, it would actually launch your function as well. So that's the good thing about the on error.
Looking at the example on the page that you just had, can you bring that page back up, please, as ice?
Yeah, sure.
It says cause equals error, and then it doesn't use the rest of it. It doesn't use that cause.
No,
string.
what it's doing, this is invalid syntax. And when you do that, it would actually raise an exception. The example is just doing that. So this is invalid, and AutoHotkey, and we could definitely test it. Look at this. So, and then let me copy so
because I
we
will
do
have to
this.
use I would have to use the code that is provided in the example because I'm in version 1.
Right. So this is version 1 thing. So I just set my script to version 1. Notice that this should tell you, hey, this is blank. You know, this is, I just got an error from AutoHotkey, right?
Mhm.
But if I don't want the users to see this thing because they would not understand that, and that's the point.
Yes.
There will be an error, but I don't want this message box to show. I
Okay.
could use the on error message. So I just tell it, hey, instead of launching the default thing, I could tell it what to launch. In this case, I would do this.
What to do. Yeah.
Right. I will tell it what to do. Now, there's a thing, there's a catch. Depending on what you return here, it would still show the message box or it would not. You can actually control whether you want the message to be shown or not.
Okay.
And it tells you. So if you return something like, so hold on, if the function is, hold on, where was my here? If any function returns a non-zero integer, the thread exits. That means that it stops executing. If an error occurs with an error function, an error is displayed and the thread exits. Otherwise, all error functions are called, an error message is displayed and the thread exits. So you have to, there is a way for you to modify. So you can use it to define whether to show the error or not, because you could actually just either not return anything, or you can exit the app instead of returning. So you could just exit like this. And now it shows you the error and closes the script, for example. But that is something that is really useful in a lot of situations. I actually created kind of like an object instead of that, so I could use a different way of logging. But if there are no more questions, maybe I could show that. But it depends on if there
This
are
is really, really useful to catch errors silently.
Yeah.
When you're developing, you knock out the return. You have return equals true. When you're not developing, when it's in the user out there, yes, then it won't return. It'll log it into silently to an error file that can be sent to you in the future as telemetry.
Right.
But it depends. You could, in the webinar, I think it was Geek Dude, talked about how you take what you get and you actually give them a meaningful,
Yeah, you can actually create your own message box if you want. Right. Yeah, you don't have to be silent about it. But in my case, what I would do definitely is, as it is just a so let me just 1 second. If it is just a function, I would actually use if debug equals debug mode, whatever you want, normal, for example.
Yes.
That way, this only gets triggered if you are in normal execution.
Yes.
But if you're not in that, so let's say that you have a variable called debug. If you have it in, say, for example, debug mode, debug on, then in this case, this is not done like that because you're debugging, right?
Yes.
And if you're debugging, you actually want to get all the errors that you can.
Correct.
But as soon as you change this to normal, then here at the bottom, what is going to happen is that now instead of showing an error, it is just appending to a file and they don't see the errors. You can do that. And actually that way, as it is a function, you can actually
you can ask your users. You can ask your users that are having particular issues. If you're doing a support session with your user, can you go to the settings, switch on debug mode, and try to do what you were doing, for example, and then or if you look, can you have a bit that if you launch the script while pressing a particular button, it launches in debug mode? Is that possible?
Or definitely. You can actually remember your scripts in your auto execute area. You can use the get key state.
Yes.
Right. So you can get a key state, and if something is pressed, you can go ahead and create this debug modality.
I think that'll be useful, and then it logs everything, so the user gets their error message, and then it'll send me that telemetry file, that error file, so I can try to investigate to see what kind of errors they're getting. That will be really, really useful.
I would restate that slightly to say it will write it and then you can send it to yourself later. Right. It doesn't.
No, well, the user can email me that file, or
they can either manually do it or the program can do it for you. Whatever, however you decide to do it.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So DTP was asking about first off, how does AutoHotkey compare to other RPA systems like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, stuff like that, right? I said basically, those other tools are like GUI examples of AutoHotkey, right? For some people, they're awesome because it enables you to do stuff that if you're not a programmer you can do. But if you know how to code at all, it's a lot easier often in AutoHotkey than it is in those to do a simple thing. The caveat I would say to that is they do have a lot of like plugins that have been built that do simplify some really advanced stuff. The more the AI type stuff that AutoHotkey doesn't have out of the box. But yeah, it's a lot of the stuff is huge overlap in with their capabilities, huge. And of course, AutoHotkey's free, right? But he also asked about importing something into Word, where if you have a Word object or something, and I was just saying, look, there's a COM object for MS Word, which you can do amazing stuff with. You could even create the thing using the macro recorder in MS Word, and then take what you did and convert it into AutoHotkey COM syntax, kind of, and it's usually really close. It takes, some minor tweaks, but yeah. Or it sounds like you have like either an image or something you want to have available, like a template. You could save what you have as a like a RTF type document and shove it into your clipboard and then have that paste. But I would go the COM approach personally.
To add to what you just mentioned regarding other RPA systems, you have to, I would categorize RPA in two sections. One of them is RPA tools, and the other ones is languages coding. Now, RPA tools are built with any language, C++, C#, AutoHotkey, whatever it is. Now, the RPA tools, the downside to them is you are restricted by what they allow you to do, because there are some things that are way too complex and they haven't coded that in, so you cannot do that with them. If you use a language, it doesn't matter which language, we just happen to like AutoHotkey because it's easier. If you use a language, C#, C++, AutoHotkey, you're not limited. You can do whatever you want. The problem is that then you have to code it yourself. So RPA tools are built for people who do not know how to code and want to have some automation, and they give you that. So if you don't know how to code, that's a good way to go, but know that you're going to be limited. If you want to be unlimited, then you have to learn any language. Especially for us, we would say AutoHotkey would be the best language to learn because it is built exactly for that. It is an automatic, it is for automation. So,
and I would add on to that as it's a good point is tools like Automation Anywhere and UiPath and stuff, they have, just like every tool, right? When you were controlling other programs, there are certain channels you can use, like UI automation, I'm sorry, the UIA approach, right? Mm-hmm. Or the ACC approach, or sending post messages or DLL mm-hmm. calls, right? There are certain things you do. Now, when you're using that GUI, that's what really made me trigger it as AS. Is like, hey, not only are you limited to that you have, hey, I can do this, but there's different methods you might use to control a program, and it's going to be very limited in those other tools of what they've said. This is how you can do it.
This is what you can do, yeah.
Like, we have been working with some crazy programs, and there's no way you could automate those with out-of-the-box.
Normal approach. Yeah, I definitely, for example, the program that we are trying to automate is a program from 1990-something. And that thing, I definitely would be surprised if one of the RPA tools available today can automate that, because it does not have the interfaces that those RPA tools would try to use to connect to it. So if that RPA tool does not allow you to do certain things, they will not be able to connect to it. Because, for example, I use the UIA library to try to see into the program, and the UIA library couldn't see anything. Just imagine that. And if the RPA tool is using the UIA library, it's not going to see anything. That's what is going to happen.
The question is, you could try to control the environment and go dirty and set the size of the resolution of the window and the size of the window and do mouse clicks in certain locations.
Yeah, but Guy, we're talking about
at that point.
It's not automation.
It is not. And basically, check this out. What if the RPA tool doesn't allow you to send mouse clicks in certain locations? Then you cannot do that.
Yes, correct.
Right now, that's exactly my point. If the RPA tool allows you to send mouse clicks,
right,
okay, you can try that. But if it doesn't, if it just uses the UIA interface, then it's not going to work. That's why we, in general, prefer to go with AutoHotkey, because I could choose. I could try the UIA. If it doesn't work, I would send events. If it doesn't work, then I would set the size of the window and trade it. There's a lot of flexibility, even though there's a lot more learning.
Clarify, Guy just mentioned, he said go dirty, right? But it's really, are you trying to imitate how a human does the goal, or are you trying to be more like a programmatic way to solve it, which is much more robust, much faster, much more likely to work on other programs and other computers?
Well, judging from my own experience, the less experienced I was in AutoHotkey programming, it was easier for me to imitate human interface. Put the mouse here and click. The better I got at programming and understanding AutoHotkey, the more I preferred the programmatic way, which was not relative to the window size or the monitor resolution, or it wasn't dependent on a computer. So the environment was more flexible. So it depends on your journey, your language journey. And I was always advised, if you have the time, learn it and do it properly. If you're only going to run it once on your computer in that corner of the screen, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So in general, as a general idea, whenever you're automating, you want to remove as much noise as you want, and by noise as you can. And by noise, I mean environment, like whether the screen resolution is different, whether the window size is different. If you can remove all that, it's better for your automation. So sending mouse clicks and sending mouse movement always have this noise about the size of the window, the size of the resolution, color of the screen, and stuff like that. So that's the reason why we usually try to avoid it. But there's sometimes, and I remember, I don't know if it was one of the guys that is here that had this issue that in the end you couldn't avoid it because he was using it was trying to automate a program that was inside a Cisco server. So then he couldn't do anything. He had to send mouse clicks. In that case, then when that is, I would use that as the last resort. That would be my approach on that.
Well, however, there's always a caveat, right? Which is what Guy alluded to a little bit of, like, when you're doing something really quick and simple, sometimes I'm only using it on my computer, right?
And once,
yeah,
that's okay.
But also, I mean, in Isaiah, you know this as well, right? Is hey, we most people do start when you're not programmers. We start with the imitating a human and sending mouse clicks. It's not that you shouldn't do it. It's that boy, it's there are other ways that are better, and it does depend on your skill set, right?
And it doesn't mean that it's bad
to do stuff.
But it's about a skill set thing. I mean, for me to automate sending,
that's one factor. There's a lot of factors.
For me to automate sending WeTransfer stuff to my clients, it took me about half an hour to an hour to use the keyboard shortcuts, tab, send, enter, copy, paste, to get it working. But for me to learn and to figure out, to reverse engineer their API type stuff from the web stuff would have taken me a lot longer, days, because I've not even touched that yet in my education.
But the guy, it still gets back to, are you going to be using this on multiple computers, right? Are other people?
Yeah, so that's where it breaks, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not one dimension, right? It's a lot of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no right and wrong. It's what's right for you at this moment in time.
No, I wouldn't 100% agree with that. But
it depends. So in general, I think there's a lot of things.
Remember, Guy, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, right? But because I totally understand your point. But remember, about a month ago, you had a question about something. You were trying to do some automation, and you were trying to automate browsers, and then it was like, hey, I want this independent of other browsers on other people's computers, and you're going to be sending keystrokes. And I'm like, there's
no way.
You're just wasting your. That's my point. Is like that's when that would be a no. Imitating humans is not going to work. Sending mouse clicks is just not. You're just killing yourself. Like taking that approach for that specific task. Right.
Yeah. So I figured out for that specific task that I could code things into the URL, and the web server would take it as parameters. So I just had to launch a URL and it negated me having to enter stuff.
Exactly. And then the cool thing is that it works in any computer, any browser, anything.
Right. Exactly. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Coding stuff into the URL is an API interaction, right?
It is,
but you don't have to learn.
You don't have to learn all the API stuff. But
no, it is an API done by the browser, which is interpreting that URL into an API call. Yes,
correct. Now, my next bit is I need to learn API calls, and I've listened to and I've watched your videos, and in theory, they're really, really simple. In practice, and this is where things break down, is every API provider have their own weird way of doing it.
Yeah,
right.
It's like some people want it in it's a different language. Speak to me in French, speak to me in English, speak to me in Welsh.
The underlying language, for the most part, is like HTTP protocol, right? Once
Yeah,
you
it
really
is.
start grasping that, and of course some other things, but that's the big one of really getting that. But it is vast, right? Like,
Yep.
correct.
but that whole OAuth 2, like that alone, to me, I can deal with any public API where it's they have it set up and you have a documentation. It's usually easy, but the stupid OAuth is where, for me, like often they do them differently, and it can be.
So what's the difference between a standard API and an OAuth? And there's version 1, 2, and 3 APIs and all this kind of stuff. What are we talking about here?
Well, I don't think. I mean, there's just every API, every endpoint, like kind of thing. They can have different versions of their API, right? And that's just a matter of they've created an API, and then sometimes they have a new one, and the syntax might be slightly different or upgraded, and that's just that. That's a local thing for them. But the OAuth 1 is really, I get some credentials and I can use those, and I don't have to do a lot of stuff. The OAuth 2 is more of a handshake, and it's usually designed more for like a browser or an app on a phone, where you're going to give your tool to other people that they have to log in and get their credentials and do this handshake and hand it back, and it's just much more complicated.
Okay.
Let me just answer to something that the guy said in the chat. I do not agree with that statement. He says that comparing doing unattended RPA without a hotkey versus industry standard is like comparing apples and oranges. And then he said like it has a lot of things out of the box, like traceability and so on. The difference is in AutoHotkey, you have to do that yourself. If you want that, you have to do it. It's not that it's not available in AutoHotkey. That's the part that I'm not agreeing with.
Out of the box, it's not
like that's a lot of stuff not available in AutoHotkey. Not true. It is. It just happens that you have to do it yourself. And the UI path, for example, makes that easy for anybody to do it. So you just have to drag and drop and it already do it, right? Great. Yeah, you can do the same without a hotkey. It's just the fact that you have to code it because AutoHotkey is not a tool,
which is
it's a
ironic.
language.
Is earlier with what guy was working through with him, right? Like you're actually showing you can set this up, right?
Right, exactly. You can do it, and the one of the things is you just have to look at it differently. UiPath is a tool. AutoHotkey is a language. To build that tool, you can create a full UiPath competitor if you want with AutoHotkey, but then you have to build every single one of the different modules with it yourself.
I think was it Dimitri was writing one of those?
Right. For example, telemetry. So this telemetry that you're talking about, that particular tool already has it. Well, in AutoHotkey, you build it yourself.
Exactly.
And in any case, the fact is, you are not limited with any, and I'm just saying AutoHotkey just because, but it could be any language, C#, C++. In any language, you can create an automation bot. The only thing is, do you want to conform to standards? Yeah, there's a lot of work to do on that particular front, but sometimes you just need something working fast. Then I would go with the RPA tool, pay the whatever I have to pay for them because I'm saving time. I have the time available. Then I do it myself. It's free, and I can do it however I want. And if I want to conform to standards, great. If I don't want to conform to standards, also great. It's just a matter of preference at this point, or availability.
And also in the RPA spectrum, right? There's the total assisted, where I'm doing stuff directly in the set. Then there's the unassisted, far end of the right, usually AI type, where data is very unstructured. On the far left, it's very structured and very clear, right? And that's where the RPA tools have done a lot more building in intricate stuff to do the unassisted AI type stuff. You can still do that with AutoHotkey, but again, you got to either program yourself or connect to APIs that offer that service, right? You can still do it. It's just, it is more upfront work because you need to, figure it out. But yeah.
That is right.
Again, we're not saying one's better than the other, right?
No, it's true.
I mean, to me, the fact that I can do the stuff for free is awesome because some of these tools are crazy expensive. And paying for the people to come to work at your company to do them, you get charged like $2,000 a day easily, and it goes on for weeks or months. And then you pay per license, per thing, even in a dev license or whatever. It starts adding up.
Right. It's just a matter of, do I have the time or should I just pay somebody to do it for me?
Mm.
That's it.
So awesome.
And-
Well, we're
and
at the end of
I
the hour.
have paid other people to do stuff for me, again, just because it wasn't worth my time learning that area of expertise, you know?
No, that's it. So we're
Thanks everyone
good.
for being here. Heroes, we have our other link to go
Hero
to.
call.
Thank you. And
Oh.
we'll see you guys all next week at the same. This is the normal time for this call now. So thank you all for being here. And if you enjoyed and learned from this, please like the video. It helps more people view the video later on. Appreciate y'all.
I'll see you on the second call, guys. Have a good one.
Right.